The stars never lied, but people certainly did. Lieutenant Diana Frost pressed her palm against the cool glass of the observation window, watching the Celestial Gate station rotate slowly against the infinite backdrop of space. The station was a marvel of engineering, built by 17 different species over 2 centuries, resembling a colossal ring of light suspended in the void. Each section glowed with a different hue, representing the various civilizations that called this neutral ground their meeting place. Today would mark humanity's official entrance into the Galactic Federation, or so the official reports claimed. Diana had been a soldier for 12 years before they handed her a diplomat's badge and told her to smile for the cameras. She knew the weight of a rifle better than she knew the weight of false pleasantries, but orders were orders. Behind her, 23 other humans prepared themselves in silence, each one carefully selected for this mission. They were teachers and engineers, scientists and peacekeepers, at least on paper. In reality, every single person aboard the transport vessel Horizon's Promise had seen combat in places Earth's government refused to acknowledge existed. Captain Vincent Park checked his ceremonial sash for the 5th time, adjusting the golden emblem that marked him as Earth's primary cultural liaison. His dark eyes met Diana's reflection in the window, and a slight nod passed between them. No words were needed. They both understood what waited for them beyond that airlock. The intercepted transmissions had been clear enough. The Galactic Federation had voted 3 weeks ago, and humanity's application for membership had been rejected. Not just rejected, but marked for elimination. Earth was growing too quickly, advancing too rapidly, asking too many uncomfortable questions about how the Federation really operated. The other species had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, comfortable in their hierarchies and traditions. Humanity represented chaos, unpredictability, and worst of all, ambition. The Federation had dealt with ambitious species before. They had refined their methods over millennia. Invite the troublesome newcomers to a grand ceremony, celebrate their achievements, make them feel welcomed and valued, then activate the biological weapon built into the station's environmental systems. Within minutes, every human aboard would be dead. Within hours, targeted strikes would eliminate Earth's orbital defenses. Within days, the homeworld would be occupied and pacified, its people scattered across the galaxy as laborers and servants. The Federation called it maintaining peace. Diana called it murder dressed in diplomatic ribbons. Dr. Thomas Reeves sat near the back of the assembly room, his fingers dancing across a tablet that displayed research papers about alien biology. His appearance was perfect for an academic, slightly disheveled gray hair, reading glasses perched on his nose, a gentle smile that put everyone at ease. The tablet really contained schematics for the station's power grid and life support systems. The research papers were cover stories. Thomas had spent 8 years in Earth's classified weapons development program before retiring to teach at a university. His retirement had lasted exactly 4 months before military intelligence recruited him for this mission. Next to him, Elena Vasquez arranged a collection of small sculptures in a protective case. Each piece represented a different aspect of human culture, from ancient civilizations to modern artistic movements. She explained their significance to anyone who asked, her voice warm and enthusiastic. What she did not explain was that each sculpture contained components that could be assembled into 12 different types of weapons. Her background in special operations had taught her that the best hiding place for something dangerous was inside something beautiful. The ship's communication system crackled to life. Docking procedure begins in 8 minutes. All personnel prepare for arrival protocols. Diana turned from the window and walked to the center of the room. 23 pairs of eyes focused on her, waiting. She did not raise her voice. There was no need for dramatic speeches or false bravado. These people knew exactly what they had volunteered for. They will greet us with smiles and ceremony. The Zinthari will offer blessings in their clicking language. The Morph Eon Collective will present gifts from their hive queens. The Kravik will perform their ritual of honored guests, which involves a great deal of formal bowing. Each species will play their part perfectly because they have done this before. We are not the first civilization they have decided to eliminate, just the latest. Captain Vincent spoke next, his voice calm and measured. Environmental sensors show elevated levels of compound X7 in the station's air filtration system. That's a neural toxin effective against most carbon-based life forms. It activates when exposed to human DNA markers. The moment we breathe the station's air, we have approximately 7 minutes before symptoms begin. Elena closed her sculpture case with a soft click. 7 minutes is more than enough time. Thomas removed his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth. The station's central power core is located in Section 12, approximately 400 meters from our docking bay. If we disable it, the entire facility loses gravity, life support, and defensive systems. The Federation security forces train extensively in zero-gravity combat, but their ceremonial guards do not. They will be unprepared. Diana nodded. Remember, they see us as primitives playing at civilization. They think our technology is inferior because we have only been traveling between stars for 50 years instead of 50,000. They assume our weapons are crude and our tactics are straightforward. They believe we will walk into their trap with grateful smiles and never suspect a thing. Jake Morrison, who officially served as a security advisor but had actually spent 6 years training counterterrorism units, stood near the airlock. His formal uniform concealed body armor that could withstand direct hits from most energy weapons in the galactic arsenal. The Kravik Honor Guard carries plasma spears. Impressive looking but slow to recharge. The Zinthari peacekeepers rely on neural disruptors that require direct line of sight. The Morph-Eon drones are numerous but individually weak. Standard suppression tactics will be effective. Docking in 4 minutes. Diana walked slowly past each person, making eye contact, seeing the determination in their faces. They were not heroes from ancient stories or characters in adventure tales. They were soldiers who had been given an impossible task and decided to attempt it anyway. Earth's survival depended on what happened in the next hour. If they failed, humanity would be erased from history, remembered only as another ambitious species that reached too far too fast. When we step through that airlock, we represent every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was waiting out there. We represent every person who refused to accept that humanity should know its place and stay small and quiet and grateful for whatever scraps the powerful decided to share. They want us to be afraid. They want us to be weak. They want us to disappear. Diana smiled, and it was not a diplomatic smile. It was the smile of someone who had survived battles that should have killed her, who had learned that sometimes the only way to achieve peace was to prove you could win a war. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humans. The ship connected to the docking bay with a hollow thud that echoed through the hull. Mechanical arms extended, creating an airtight seal. Atmospheric reading stabilized. Beyond the airlock, the Galactic Federation waited with poison in the air and murder in their hearts. 24 humans checked their hidden weapons one final time, then arranged their faces into expressions of innocent excitement. The airlock door began to open, revealing brilliant lights and the assembled representatives of 17 alien civilizations, all of them completely certain that humanity would be dead within the hour. They had no idea how wrong they were. The airlock hissed open like a serpent's warning, though none of the aliens seemed to recognize the danger. Diana stepped through first, her expression carefully crafted to show awe and humble gratitude. The reception hall of the Celestial Gate Station stretched before them like a cathedral built by gods who had forgotten what humility meant. The ceiling arched 60 meters overhead, constructed from some crystalline material that refracted light into cascading rainbows. Hundreds of alien dignitaries lined the pathway, their forms ranging from the familiar to the utterly bizarre. At the far end of the hall, 7 figures sat on an elevated platform, the High Council of the Galactic Federation. Chancellor Vrwenen of the Zinthari occupied the central throne, his chitinous body gleaming like polished obsidian. To his right, the Morph-Eon Hive speaker pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that supposedly represented collective thought. To his left, General Cross of the Kravik military caste stood rigid in his ceremonial armor, 3 meters of scaled muscle and barely contained aggression. Honored guests from Earth, Chancellor Vryn's voice emerged from translator devices embedded throughout the hall, transforming his clicking mandibles into words humans could understand. You stand at the threshold of history. Today, humanity joins the great tapestry of civilized species. Today, you become part of something greater than yourselves. Diana bowed with practiced precision, the gesture deep enough to show respect but not submission. Chancellor Vryn, members of the High Council, representatives of the Federation, Earth thanks you for this extraordinary honor. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars. Behind her, Captain Vincent carried a sealed container that supposedly held gifts from Earth's leadership. In reality, the container held something far more valuable, a compact electromagnetic pulse generator capable of disabling electronic systems in a 300-meter radius. Thomas Reeves had designed it himself, then disguised it as a ceremonial artifact. The irony was not lost on Diana. They were literally carrying a weapon into the heart of the Federation's power, and no one suspected a thing. The procession began. Alien dignitaries stepped forward one by one, offering formal greetings and symbolic gifts. The Zinthari presented a data crystal containing their species' historical archives. The Morph Eon Collective offered a small bioorganic computer grown specifically for this occasion. The Krovik gave a ceremonial blade, its edge sharp enough to slice through starship hull plating, a gift that revealed how they truly viewed warfare as the highest form of art. Elena Vasquez accepted each gift with gracious words, carefully cataloging which species seemed genuinely welcoming and which radiated barely concealed hostility. Most fell into the latter category. She could see it in their body language, the way they kept distance, the subtle positioning that marked them as predators evaluating prey. The Federation had spent thousands of years perfecting the appearance of civilization while maintaining the instincts of conquerors. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Diana's internal clock counted down the seconds until the toxin would activate. They had taken precautions, of course. Each human had received injections before departing Earth, experimental compounds designed to counteract the specific poison the Federation used. The medical team had promised a 70% success rate. Diana had not mentioned to anyone that 70% meant 7 out of 10 would survive, which also meant 3 out of 10 would die screaming. She pushed the thought aside. Doubt was a luxury she could not afford. The ceremony continued with speeches and formal declarations. Chancellor Vryn spoke at length about unity and cooperation, his words flowing like honey while his compound eyes tracked every human movement with predatory focus. The Hive speaker contributed passages about collective consciousness and the importance of subordinating individual will to the greater good. General Cross said very little, but his three-fingered hand never strayed far from the plasma rifle mounted on his armor. And now, Chancellor Vryn announced, his mandibles clicking in what might have been satisfaction, we invite our honored guests to share refreshments and engage in informal fellowship. Let this day mark the beginning of a new era. The toxin would activate during the reception. Diana had reviewed the intercepted intelligence reports enough times to memorize every detail. The poison was designed to be subtle, inducing symptoms that resembled natural illness. Humans would begin feeling dizzy and disoriented. Some would collapse. Others would struggle to breathe. Within 10 minutes, all would be unconscious. Within 20, all would be dead. The Federation would express shock and sadness, claiming that humans were apparently incompatible with standard station atmosphere. Tragic accident. Sincere apologies. Nothing to be done, except Diana and her team had no intention of giving them that satisfaction. Jake Morrison moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his eyes tracking security positions and defensive installations. The honor guards were positioned exactly where intelligence reports predicted, 12 Krovik soldiers spaced evenly around the hall's perimeter, each armed with plasma spears and neural disruptors. 37 Morph Eon drones clustered near the ceiling, their compound eyes scanning for threats that they would never see coming. The Zinthari peacekeepers mingled with the crowd, their chitinous forms making them difficult to distinguish from the civilian diplomats they were supposed to protect. Thomas Reeves engaged a group of Morph-Eon scientists in conversation about quantum field theories, his enthusiasm apparently genuine. While he talked, his glasses scanned the station's infrastructure, mapping power conduits and identifying critical systems. The sculptures Elena carried provided him with real-time data about structural weaknesses and potential choke points. Within 5 minutes, Thomas had identified 16 different ways to disable the station's primary functions. Elena herself stood near a group of Zinthari artists, discussing the evolution of human sculpture through different historical periods. Her words were carefully chosen to be both informative and boring, the kind of academic lecture that made listeners' attention wander. While she talked, her fingers brushed against the sculptures in her case, assembling components with movements too subtle for anyone to notice. By the time she finished explaining the significance of abstract expressionism, she had constructed 3 weapons and a communications jammer. Captain Vincent approached the gift container, preparing to present Earth's offering to the High Council. His movements were slow and ceremonial, each gesture choreographed to appear respectful and non-threatening. What the aliens did not realize was that his elaborate preparation ritual was actually giving Thomas time to finish his scans and Elena time to complete her weapon assembly. Diana felt it begin. A subtle tightness in her chest, a faint burning sensation in her lungs. The toxin was activating. Around her, other humans showed similar reactions. Dr. Reeves stumbled slightly, catching himself on a nearby pillar. Lieutenant Hayes pressed a hand to his temple, his face pale. The experimental countermeasures were working, but they were not perfect. The poison was still affecting them, just not as severely as the Federation expected. Chancellor Vryn leaned forward on his throne, his compound eyes glittering with anticipation. He was waiting for the humans to collapse, waiting for the moment when Earth's finest would fall to their knees and realize they had been led into a trap. Diana could see it in his posture, the way his mandibles clicked with barely suppressed excitement. She let herself sway slightly, as if losing balance. Around her, the other humans played their parts perfectly. Some grabbed nearby railings for support. Others closed their eyes as if fighting dizziness. To anyone watching, it appeared that the poison was working exactly as designed. General Cross stood from his position on the council platform, his massive form radiating satisfaction. It appears our guests are experiencing difficulty with the station's atmosphere. Perhaps they require medical attention. The Kravik honor guards began moving forward, their plasma spears raised in what was supposedly a gesture of assistance. Diana recognized it for what it really was, the final stage of the trap. The guards would approach under the pretense of helping, then ensure that any humans who had somehow survived the initial toxin exposure were finished off quickly and quietly. Diana looked up at Chancellor Vryn, her expression showing confusion and fear. Let him think humanity was helpless. Let him believe his plan had succeeded. Let every alien in this hall think that Earth's representatives were about to die without ever understanding what had killed them. Then she smiled. It was not the smile of a victim. It was not the expression of someone who had been outmaneuvered and defeated. It was the smile of a predator who had been pretending to be prey, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal her true nature. Captain Vincent, Diana said, her voice suddenly clear and strong, all traces of weakness vanished. I believe it's time to present our gift. Vincent opened the container. The electromagnetic pulse generator activated with a sound like thunder compressed into a single instant. Every electronic system in the reception hall died simultaneously, lights flickered and failed. Translator devices went silent. Weapons systems shut down. The Morph-Eon drones fell from the ceiling like rain, their biological computers overwhelmed by the electromagnetic surge. In the sudden darkness, illuminated only by emergency lighting that struggled to activate, 24 humans stopped pretending to be helpless diplomats. They became what they had always been, soldiers who had walked into hell with their eyes open, fully aware of the trap, and prepared to turn it back on those who had set it. Chancellor Vryn's mandibles clicked in confusion and growing horror as he realized that humans did not die easily, and they certainly did not die quietly. the real ceremony was about to begin. Darkness swallowed the great hall like a living thing, and in that darkness, humanity shed its disguise. Diana moved before the emergency lights could fully activate, her diplomatic grace transforming into something fluid and lethal. The ceremonial pin on her jacket unfolded into a compact weapon, its design so elegant that even she sometimes forgot it could punch through reinforced armor. Around her, 23 other humans executed movements they had practiced 10,000 times in simulated environments that Earth's government swore did not exist. Thomas Reeves was no longer the gentle academic. His tablet shattered against the nearest wall, revealing the sophisticated hacking tool hidden inside its frame. Within seconds, he had breached the station's backup systems, overriding security protocols that the Federation believed were impenetrable. Life support compromised. Gravity generators offline. Emergency bulkheads sealing. We have control of sections 1 through 9. Elena Vasquez's sculptures exploded into a dozen components that snapped together with practiced precision. What emerged was not art but function, weapons designed by engineers who understood that sometimes survival required more than peaceful intentions. She tossed assembled units to Diana, Jake, and others, each person catching them without looking, muscle memory overriding conscious thought. The Kravik honor guards recovered from their shock first, their military training asserting itself. General Cross roared something in his native language, a sound that needed no translation. It was the sound of rage and wounded pride, the fury of a predator who had discovered that his prey had teeth. Plasma spears ignited, casting the hall in flickering blue light. The guards charged forward, 3 meters of scaled muscle moving with surprising speed. They never reached their targets. Jake Morrison had spent 6 years teaching humans how to fight opponents who were bigger, stronger, and better armored. The key was not to match their strength but to exploit their weaknesses. As the first Kravik guard thrust his spear forward, Jake stepped inside the attack's arc, his movements precise and economical. The high-frequency blade hidden in his ceremonial sword activated with a sound like singing metal. It passed through the guard's armor as if cutting paper, and the massive alien collapsed with an expression of utter disbelief. The other guards hesitated, just for a moment. That moment was fatal. 23 humans moved as one, a coordinated assault that transformed the reception hall into a battlefield. They did not fight like the Federation expected. There were no battle cries or dramatic gestures. They simply moved with terrifying efficiency, each action designed to neutralize threats and maintain momentum. Chancellor Vrwenin scrambled backward on his throne, his compound eyes reflecting a truth he had refused to acknowledge until this moment. Humanity was not primitive. They were not naive. They had known about the trap from the beginning, had walked into it willingly, and had turned it into an ambush of their own design. Impossible, he clicked, his translator still functioning on emergency power. You should be dead. The toxin should have killed you minutes ago. Diana approached the platform, her weapon held steady but not threatening. Not yet. We have been preparing for this meeting for 18 months, Chancellor. Did you really think we would not test your station's atmosphere before arriving? Did you honestly believe that a species which survived ice ages and world wars and its own tendency toward self-destruction would walk blindly into poison? Behind her, Captain Vincent worked with Thomas to establish control over more of the station's systems. Bulkheads sealed, cutting off reinforcements. Communication arrays transmitted carefully crafted messages to every corner of the celestial gate, messages that would be very difficult to suppress or deny. Humanity's story was being broadcast to the entire galaxy, not the sanitized version the Federation preferred, but the truth. The intercepted transmissions. The planned genocide. The arrogant assumption that Earth would simply accept its role as victim. The Morpheon Hive speaker pulsed with agitated colors. This is an act of war. You have attacked a diplomatic station. The entire Federation will unite against your species. Is it war to defend ourselves against murder? Elena's voice carried across the hall, clear and strong. Is it war to refuse extinction? You decided humanity was too dangerous to exist. You planned to eliminate us before we could become a threat to your comfortable hierarchies. We simply declined to cooperate with your genocide. More aliens emerged from side corridors, drawn by the commotion and the failure of station systems. They found themselves facing humans who no longer smiled with diplomatic warmth but stood with weapons ready and expressions that promised consequences for further aggression. The message was clear: Earth would not start a war, but they would absolutely finish one. General Cross struggled to his feet, his armor damaged but still functional. He looked at his fallen guards, at the humans who had defeated trained warriors in less than a minute, at the tactical situation that had somehow reversed itself completely. His species respected strength above all else, and he was seeing strength that he had dismissed as impossible. You planned this, he said, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. From the moment you received our invitation, you knew what we intended. We hoped we were wrong, Diana admitted. We genuinely wanted peace. But we are not so foolish as to want it more than we want survival. Every species in this galaxy learned that lesson at some point in their history. Some learned it from being predators. Some learned it from being prey. Humanity learned it from being both. The emergency lights finally stabilized, casting the hall in harsh illumination that revealed the full scope of what had transpired. Kravik guards defeated. Morpheon drones disabled. Zinthari peacekeepers retreating. The High Council of the Galactic Federation trapped in their own station, facing representatives of a species they had underestimated so completely that the words seemed inadequate. Thomas looked up from his work, his gentle academic expression returned but somehow changed. I have downloaded approximately 40% of the Federation's classified archives. Treaty violations. Suppressed technologies. Records of 17 other species who received similar invitations and never returned home. Earth's intelligence services will find this information very interesting. Chancellor Vryn's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound that translated as both fear and calculation. What do you want? Clearly, you did not come here to kill us all, or you would have done so already. Diana lowered her weapon, though she did not holster it. We want what we have always wanted. A fair chance to exist among the stars. The right to advance and grow without being murdered for our potential. Recognition that humanity deserves a place in this galaxy, not as servants or cautionary tales, but as equals. And if the Federation refuses? The Hive speaker's colors had shifted to something that might have been respect or might have been continued hostility. Then the galaxy learns what happened here today, Captain Vincent replied. Every species that has ever wondered if the Federation truly represents their interests. Every civilization that has felt the weight of your hierarchies and traditions. Every world that has been told to know its place and be grateful for scraps. They all learn that the mighty Galactic Federation tried to poison Earth's diplomats and failed. They all learn that 24 humans defeated hundreds of your guards and seized control of your most important station. They all learn that perhaps the Federation is not as powerful as it pretends to be. The silence that followed was profound. Every alien in the hall understood the implication. The Federation's power rested on the belief that resistance was futile, that their military and technological superiority made them invincible. If one species could defy them successfully, others would follow. The carefully maintained order of thousands of years would crack and eventually shatter. General Cross was the first to speak, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had just watched his worldview collapse. You do not fight like primitives. That weapon, the blade that cut through my guard's armor, it should not exist according to your technological level. Jake smiled grimly. We told you we wanted peace. We never said we were unprepared for war. Humanity has been fighting itself for thousands of years. We became very good at it. When we turned that knowledge toward preparing for potential alien threats, we became even better. Elena added, every gift we brought, every ceremonial object, every piece of cultural exchange, they were all designed to serve dual purposes. Beauty and function. Art and survival. That is what you never understood about humans. We do not see these things as contradictory. We understand that sometimes the greatest act of peace is being fully prepared to defend it. Diana looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of aliens from a dozen different species. Some showed fear. Others showed anger. A few showed something that might have been admiration. We did not want this confrontation. We came hoping that the intercepted transmissions were wrong, that the Federation would prove itself worthy of the trust we wanted to give. But we are not children, and we are not fools. We know what civilizations do when they feel threatened by newcomers. She turned back to Chancellor Vrwnen. So here is what happens next. Earth releases all the information we have gathered, all the evidence of what you planned. The galaxy learns the truth. Then we negotiate, not as victims grateful for your mercy, but as equals who have proven they cannot be easily destroyed. Or you can try to suppress this information and eliminate us, in which case you will discover that the 24 humans you see here are not the only ones who came prepared. Thomas looked up from his workstation. His expression apologetic but firm. The downloads I mentioned earlier? They were automatically transmitted to 300 different locations across the galaxy. Even if you kill everyone in this room, the truth is already spreading. You cannot stop it. You can only choose how you respond to it. The weight of that statement settled over the hall like snow. The Federation had operated for millennia on the principle that information could be controlled, that narratives could be shaped, that uncomfortable truths could be buried beneath diplomatic language and official denials. Humanity had just proved that principle false. Chancellor Vrwnen's mandibles moved slowly, translating into words that sounded tired and ancient. You have made enemies today. Powerful enemies who will not forget this humiliation. Perhaps, Diana acknowledged. But we have also made it clear that humanity is not prey. We are a species that reaches for the stars with open hands, hoping for friendship. But if those hands are met with poison, they close into fists. Remember that, Chancellor. Remember it well. Because the next time the Federation decides that a species is too dangerous to exist, they will wonder if perhaps they are making the same mistake twice. She gestured to her team. One by one, they began gathering their equipment, maintaining defensive positions but clearly preparing to depart. We came for a ceremony today. We came to join your Federation and become part of your galactic community. That invitation is clearly no longer valid. So we will return to Earth, and we will share what we learned. Then humanity will decide its own path forward, with or without the Federation's approval. As they moved toward the airlocks, no one tried to stop them. The aliens who filled the Great Hall simply watched, processing the impossible thing they had just witnessed. A species barely 50 years into space travel had outmaneuvered civilizations that had mastered interstellar flight when humanity was still hiding in caves. The implications would ripple across the galaxy for generations, General Cross called out as Diana reached the airlock. If we meet again, human, will it be as enemies or allies? Diana paused, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. That depends entirely on you, General. Humanity has proven we can survive your hostility. The question is whether the Federation can survive our friendship. We transform everything we touch, for better or worse. That is what frightens you. But it is also what could save you, if you were brave enough to accept it. The airlock sealed behind them with a hiss of equalizing pressure. 24 humans walked back to their ship, carrying with them proof that Earth would not go quietly into extinction, would not accept that their place in the galaxy was to be erased before they truly began. Behind them, the Galactic Federation faced a choice they never imagined they would need to make. They could try to destroy humanity and risk losing everything in the process, or they could accept that the galaxy had changed, that a new player had entered the game, and that the rules they had enforced for thousands of years might need to be rewritten. The stars watched in silence, waiting to see what would happen next. And somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity prepared for whatever answer the Federation would choose, knowing that regardless of the outcome, they had already won the most important victory. They had proved that Earth's children did not need permission to exist among the stars. They simply needed the courage to reach for them and the strength to hold on when others tried to pull them down. The age of humanity's quiet isolation had ended. What came next would be written in the actions of both species, in choices made and consequences accepted, in the eternal dance between those who sought to maintain order and those who dared to dream of something better, and in that dance, humanity had just taken their first step. 3 months passed like whispers in the void. Earth's revelation echoed across the galaxy with a force that the Federation could not contain, no matter how many official denials they issued or diplomatic channels they pressured into silence. The truth had a weight that fiction could never match, and billions of beings across hundreds of worlds watched the recordings that humanity broadcast. They saw Chancellor Vryn's compound eyes reflecting guilty knowledge. They heard General Cross admit to planning genocide. They witnessed the Morph-Eon Hive speaker's colors shifting through patterns that even other species recognized as deception exposed. Diana stood in her office at Earth's orbital command station, looking down at the blue marble of her homeworld. The view never got old, that perfect sphere of clouds and oceans and continents where humanity had been born and nearly died 1,000 times over. They had survived ice and fire, plague and war, their own short-sighted stupidity and their remarkable capacity for hope. Now they faced a challenge that dwarfed all those previous trials. The entire galaxy knew Earth existed, knew that humans would not accept subjugation, and the question of what happened next hung in the balance like a sword suspended by spider silk. Admiral Frost, a voice interrupted her contemplation. She had earned the promotion 3 weeks after returning from the Celestial Gate, though she still felt strange hearing the title. Captain Vincent Park entered her office, his expression showing the careful neutrality he wore when delivering news that could go either way. "We have received a communication from the Federation. They are requesting a diplomatic meeting." "Requesting," Diana repeated, noting the word choice. "Not demanding. Not ordering. Requesting." Vincent smiled slightly. "The galaxy is watching them now. Every move they make is being scrutinized by species who are suddenly wondering if their own treaties and agreements were negotiated fairly or coerced through threat of elimination. The Federation is discovering what it feels like to have their authority questioned." Diana returned to her desk, pulling up star charts and intelligence reports. In the months since their confrontation, 17 different species had reached out to Earth with private communications. Some offered trade agreements. Others proposed military alliances. A few simply wanted to share their own stories of Federation manipulation and control. The monolithic authority that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was fracturing, and humanity had become the catalyst for change they never intended to be. "What are they proposing?" Diana asked. "A new treaty. Genuine negotiation this time, with independent arbitrators from neutral species. They are offering humanity what they call provisional membership, which includes access to Federation trade networks and technology exchanges but with certain restrictions on military expansion and territorial claims." Diana studied the proposal that appeared on her screen. It was carefully worded, designed to give the Federation ways to maintain some control while appearing to respect Earth's sovereignty. She could see the compromises and hidden clauses, the diplomatic language that said one thing while meaning another. It was exactly the kind of treaty that would have seemed generous 3 months ago, before humanity proved they could not be easily destroyed. "And if we refuse?" she asked. Vincent's expression darkened. "Then we face the possibility of open conflict. The Federation's military capabilities still far exceed ours. We won one battle through surprise and preparation, but we cannot win a prolonged war against hundreds of advanced civilizations. Some of our analysts believe refusing would be suicide. Others think accepting this treaty would be a slower form of the same thing, trapping us in agreements that limit our growth and keep us dependent on Federation approval." Diana closed her eyes, feeling the weight of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of what might be waiting out there. She thought of Thomas Reeves, who had returned to his university but kept consulting on defense projects because he understood that peace required vigilance. She thought of Elena Vasquez, now training the next generation of diplomats who would need to be both artists and warriors. She thought of Jake Morrison, who had told her that the hardest battles were the ones where you had to choose between surviving today and living freely tomorrow. "Schedule the meeting," Diana said finally. "But on neutral ground, not a Federation station. And we bring our own security, our own equipment, our own terms." "They want negotiation?" "Then they get real negotiation, not another trap dressed in ceremony." Vincent nodded, already making notes. "The independent arbitrators are suggesting a location in the median expanse, roughly equidistant from Earth and the Federation core worlds. It is an old trading station, built before the Federation centralized power. Some species still remember when galactic politics were not dominated by a single authority." "Good. Remind them that humans remember things too. We remember every promise made and broken, every civilization that grew too comfortable with its own power and forgot that authority must be earned, not assumed." Diana stood, walking back to the window. "We are not trying to destroy the Federation. But we will not allow them to destroy us either, slowly or quickly. If they want peace, they will learn to share power. If they want war, they will learn that Earth produces survivors, not victims." The next weeks were a flurry of preparation and careful positioning. Earth's diplomatic corps expanded rapidly, drawing from military intelligence, academic institutions, and even corporate negotiators who understood the art of finding leverage in seemingly unequal situations. Every person received training in alien psychology, political theory, and combat protocols. The Federation had underestimated humanity once. Diana was determined to ensure they never made that mistake again. The meeting took place on a station called Crossroads, a name that seemed almost prophetically appropriate. It was smaller than the Celestial Gate, less grand and imposing, built for function rather than intimidation. Diana arrived with a delegation of 12 humans, each one carefully selected for their expertise and their ability to remain calm under pressure. The Federation sent twice as many representatives, perhaps hoping numbers would convey authority. Chancellor Vrwenen was not among them. The Zinthari leader had been removed from his position following the revelation of his planned genocide, replaced by a younger official named Kisra who clicked her mandibles nervously when meeting the human delegation. General Cross was present, his armor showing new decorations that Diana did not recognize. The Morpheon sent a different hive speaker, one whose colors pulsed with patterns that suggested cautious optimism rather than hostility. The negotiations lasted 3 weeks. Each side brought proposals and counter-proposals, drawing lines and making concessions, feeling out the boundaries of what was possible. The independent arbitrators mediated disputes and called out bad faith arguments from either side. Slowly, painfully, a framework emerged. Earth would receive full Federation membership, not provisional status. In exchange, humanity agreed to restrictions on military expansion in certain regions and limitations on the spread of specific technologies that the Federation deemed destabilizing. Neither side got everything they wanted, but both sides got enough to call it victory. On the final day, Diana stood before the assembly with a document that had been written and rewritten 100 times. This treaty represents something new in galactic politics. It recognizes that power must be balanced with accountability, that newer species deserve respect rather than condescension, and that the galaxy belongs to all civilizations, not just those who happen to reach the stars first. General Cross responded with characteristic bluntness. "This treaty exists because you proved you could cut through our guards and seize our most secure station. Do not pretend this is about philosophy. This is about force." Diana nodded, accepting the assessment. Force was necessary to gain respect. But respect is necessary to build peace. Yes, humanity showed we could fight. Now we are showing we can negotiate. Both capabilities are equally important. The galaxy does not need more conquerors. It needs partners who understand that cooperation requires mutual strength, not the strong dictating to the weak. The Morpheon hive speaker's colors shifted to something that the translators interpreted as thoughtful agreement. Perhaps the Federation needed this challenge. Perhaps we had grown too comfortable, too certain of our own righteousness. This human Diana and her companions reminded us that every civilization believes itself justified, and that true wisdom lies in questioning our own assumptions. Kisra clicked her mandibles in what might have been approval. The Zinthari have a saying, the strongest trees are those that bend in the wind. For too long, the Federation tried to stand rigid and unmoving. Humanity has been our wind, forcing us to bend or break. We have chosen to bend, and perhaps we will be stronger for it. The treaty was signed with ceremonial gravity, this time without poison or hidden weapons. Diana felt the weight of history in that moment, knowing that what happened here would echo for generations. Earth had secured not just survival but a genuine place among the stars. They had transformed from victims of a planned extinction to partners in shaping galactic future. But as she sealed her signature on the digital document, Diana remembered something Jake Morrison had told her on the flight back from the Celestial Gate. "We won the first battle, but this war never truly ends. The Federation will always remember that we defied them. Some species will admire us for it. Others will resent us. We have made ourselves relevant, which means we have made ourselves a permanent factor in galactic politics. There is no going back to being small and ignored." He had been right. The treaty guaranteed peace, but it did not guarantee comfort or safety. Earth would need to remain vigilant, strong, and wise. They would need to prove that their defiance came not from aggression but from principle. They would need to show that a species could be powerful without being oppressive, ambitious without being destructive. Diana returned to Earth 6 days later, descending through the atmosphere to see light spreading across the night side of the planet. Those lights represented cities and homes, billions of humans who would never fully understand how close they came to extinction, who would grow up in a galaxy where Earth was respected rather than dismissed. She thought about the children who would be born into a civilization that reached across star systems, who would consider aliens not as impossible fantasies but as neighbors and colleagues and sometimes friends. In her office that night, Diana wrote a report that would be classified for 50 years. Future generations would eventually read it and understand the choices that had been made, the risks that had been accepted, the careful balance between strength and restraint that defined humanity's entry into galactic civilization. "We did not go to the stars to conquer them," she wrote. "We went because we had to, because something in human nature demands that we reach beyond our grasp, that we explore and learn and grow. The Federation tried to kill that nature before it could threaten their control. They failed because they misunderstood what drives us. We are not warriors seeking glory or conquerors seeking dominion. We are survivors who refuse to accept that our story ends with someone else's fear." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "In the coming centuries, humanity will face challenges we cannot yet imagine. We will make mistakes and achieve victories. We will be loved and hated, admired and feared. But we will always remember the lesson we taught ourselves at the Celestial Gate: peace is not surrender, and survival is not enough. We reach for the stars not because we must prove our strength, but because exploring the unknown is who we are. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us worthy of the stars." Diana sealed the report and sent it to archives, then returned to the window. Earth rotated slowly below, that ancient cradle of humanity that had given birth to a species strange enough to look at the infinite darkness and see not terror but invitation. Somewhere in that darkness, other civilizations watched and wondered what humanity would do next. The galaxy had changed, would continue changing, shaped by the choices that all species made together. The Federation had learned that power was not permanent. Humanity had learned that freedom required eternal vigilance. And the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating the fact that something new had entered their ancient dance, something unpredictable and determined and fully alive. The ceremony at the Celestial Gate was supposed to have been humanity's end. Instead, it became their beginning. Not the beginning of empire or conquest, but the beginning of participation in a story larger than any single species. They had walked into a trap designed to eliminate them and emerged as partners in shaping the future. They had faced beings who considered themselves superior and demanded to be treated as equals. They had proven that sometimes the greatest act of diplomacy is being prepared to defend your right to exist. And in that proof, in that moment when humans stood surrounded by aliens who wanted them dead and chose to fight back, they had not just saved Earth. They had reminded the entire galaxy of a truth that civilizations sometimes forget, that the measure of a species is not how long they have sailed between stars, but what they are willing to sacrifice to continue sailing. The stars remembered. Earth remembered. And the story that began with a poisoned welcome had transformed into something no one expected, least of all the Federation that tried to write humanity's ending before their tale truly began. Diana smiled at her reflection in the window, seeing not an admiral but a woman who had looked into the abyss and refused to blink. Behind her, Earth continued its eternal rotation, carrying billions of souls who could now dream of futures among the stars without wondering if those dreams would end in betrayal. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders. Humanity had earned the right to explore it, not through conquest but through the simple, stubborn refusal to accept that they did not belong. The next chapters would be written by generations to come, but the foundation had been laid. Peace without surrender. Strength without oppression. Dreams without limits. The stars waited, patient and eternal, ready to see what else humanity would dare to accomplish now that they had proven the impossible was simply another challenge to overcome. And somewhere in the diplomatic archives of 100 different civilizations, beings who had never met humans began to understand that the galaxy had gained not just another member species, but a reminder of why the stars were worth reaching for in the first place.